Judge Chester from the District Court.
Big Al's pal.
Who's not retired. Any other current members of the District Court present? Elected officials, I see Mr. Scott Schellenberger, our State's Attorney in the back. Any other esteemed elected officials? Don't want to leave anybody out. Okay. Appreciate all of you coming. All who sit on this bench are here temporarily. The portrait that is presented today will be displayed permanently in this courthouse. In fact, in this courtroom for all the ages. And so beginning today, the likeness of Judge Alfred Lawrence Brennan, Sr. will take its place among many distinguished jurists who have served the citizens of Baltimore County. We are pleased to have with us most of the members of the Brennan family. Marge Brennan, Judge Brennan's wife of 59 years. Yes? Welcome. It's fine. I know Judge Brennan had 5 sons. I don't know if all 5 are here, but I know Al Brennan Jr. is here. Brennan, Al, why don't you stand a minute? And Bob Brennan. Bob.
He's younger than me.
Perry. Don. Michael.
He's older than me.
Now the one child they were all waiting for, the daughter. Carolyn Westcott.
Yay.
And I'm sure that some of Judge Brennan's 16 or so grandchildren are here. So if you're all here, please stand. Are you still 16? Knew it was at least 16, but wasn't sure. All right. So I want to extend a really warm welcome to all of the friends and family of Judge Brennan, elected officials. At this time, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Alfred L. Brennan Jr., Esquire, son of Judge Brennan, who will speak about his father. Mr. Brennan, you may approach.
Thank you.
Judges of the Circuit and District Court, Circuit Court personnel, family, and friends. It is an honor and privilege for Alfred L. Brennan Sr. and his family to have his portrait placed in the courtroom of the Circuit Court for Baltimore County. I am sure that he is happy to know that his likeness will forever be in the good company of many of his colleagues. Judge Brennan first came to the Circuit Court for Baltimore County in the early 1950s to search titles in the land records while he was working for the real estate title company. He told me that when he was in Towson searching titles, they would go over to Towson State and play baseball during lunch. Can you imagine having the time to play baseball during lunch hour today? Alfred L. Brennan Sr. graduated from the University of Baltimore School of Law in 1954 and joined the law firm McGuire and Brennan upon passing the bar exam. He did not have a mentor when he started. He was just given a file and told to go to court. In the early 1960s, the firm merged and became known as Turnbull, Brewster, Boone, McGuire, Brennan, and Cook. Judge John Turnbull Jr.'s father, John Turnbull, who later became a judge, was a member of the firm, and he liked to get to work early. If Al Brennan needed advice on a case, he would also get to the office early and run his cases by Judge Turnbull. He practiced in the circuit courts and district courts in Maryland, handling both civil and criminal matters. In 1967, John McGuire was appointed to the Circuit Court for Baltimore County, and the firm became known as Brennan and Brennan, which now consisted of brothers John and Alfred Brennan. I joined the firm in April of 1984 and had the privilege of working with my father until August of the same year, when he was appointed to the District Court for Baltimore County. Judge Brennan served on the District Court until September 1988, and Governor Schaefer appointed him to the Circuit Court for Baltimore County. He reluctantly retired in 1998 when he turned the age of judicial senility. However, the court kept calling him back to hear cases in the District Court and the Circuit Courts of not only Baltimore County, but but some of the surrounding counties and Baltimore City. All of the Brennan children were introduced to the circuit court from Baltimore County at an early age. Our father would take us to the record office in the old courthouse on Friday nights, where he would do real estate title bring-to-dates. There was a Coke machine, and if we behaved ourselves, we would get a bottle of soda. It was our date night with our father. Judge Alfred Brennan was more than a judge. He was a member of the Maryland State Bar Association Board of Governors, a member of the Board of Trustees of Franklinsburg Hospital. I want to recognize Judge Ciccone, who just came in. A member of the Board of Trustees of Franklinsburg Hospital, Chairman of Boy Scout Troop 750, President of the Middle River Optimist Club, and a member of the Dissenters Law Club. He was very active in the Baltimore County Bar Association and was president in 1982. A teacher to his friends of the finer points of poker, he always knew when to hold them and when to fold them. An avid fisherman who always strived to catch the big one, but often failed. And by the way, he had 6 children and 16 grandchildren, and was very active in their sporting, scout, and school events. He loved his family and would plan vacations, Super Bowl parties, and family reunions so we could all be together. All of this was made possible by the love, support, and patience of the love of his life, Mumsy. But what made Big Al a great judge? He practiced for 29 years as an attorney before taking the bench. He had heard it all before and knew a lie from the truth. Judge Brennan understood people and their problems. He was great with people and could talk to anyone. I have been told by those who appeared before him in settlement court that he knew how to talk to their clients, let them know what to expect in court, and what a reasonable settlement should be. He took the time to work with the lawyers and their clients to get them to settle. I cannot tell you how many people have commented that they wish Judge Brennan was still sitting in settlement court today. Judge Brennan had the great privilege of working with his secretaries, law clerks, court clerks, sheriffs, state's attorneys, and public defenders in this courthouse. He respected each and every one of them, for without them, there would be no courthouse. Last but not least, he was honored to have served with his fellow members of this bench. His family looks forward to the acceptance of his portrait in this courtroom of the Baltimore County Circuit Court. Thank you.
Next we have on the agenda is Carolyn Brennan Westcott, Esquire, daughter of Judge Brennan, and she will likewise offer remarks about her father. Permission granted.
Hi everyone, I'm Carolyn Westcott, the youngest of the 6. I just want to thank you all for coming today to honor my father, Al Brennan. I know my dad would be humbled and honored to know that his portrait will be on these walls with so many of his mentors and friends and colleagues, and even a few of his tennis friends too. The Baltimore County Bar was part of his family, and he would be so proud to know that his portrait will be here. 21 years ago, I had the wonderful opportunity of spending a year here in this building working with my dad. I was working as a clerk for the Honorable Barbara Kerhow, and Debbie Gandelto was my dad's law clerk. We were still in school and getting ready to take the bar exam. I didn't work with him, but I did get the honor of seeing him every day that year, and it was such a joy. When Judge Howe wasn't on the bench, which was usually at lunch or when we didn't have an afternoon docket, my dad would be sitting at his desk, diligently going over files and getting ready for court. And Milton Candell, who was our court clerk, his desk was right next to mine. We sat just outside of Judge Howe's office, and we had a bird's eye view of my dad. And Milton would lean over to me and say, "Karen, look at your dad. I think he's asleep." And then we would go back and forth talking about whether or not he was asleep, and then all of a sudden, from across the chambers, without lifting his head, "I'm not sleeping." So we knew he was working hard. I was also engaged to be married at this time, and Mumsy and I were very busy planning my wedding. And at lunchtime, my dad would call over to me, I think it was on Wednesdays or Thursdays. "Hey, Missy, what size dress do you wear?" "Why?" He'd say, "I'm looking at the penny saver, and there's a size 10 dress in here for only $100. He did this every week, and it's one of my favorites. favorite memories of working up in those courtrooms. He was so much fun. While we were in there, attorneys would always come through, and they always seemed to have the greatest respect for my father. They would come over and find out that I was his daughter, and they would always say to me how much they enjoyed being before the bench with my father there. They always felt like that, even though they might have lost a trial, they felt that they got a fair trial with my father. I always respected my father before this, but when I realized how many people truly respected my father professionally, it made me really feel good about my dad. When I decided to attend law school, my father completely supported me, and he was always there to help me out. There was one time when I was taking ethics in the summertime, and I was not able to focus on this test at all, and I called my dad, freaking out, and he was at the beach with Mom, and he said, "Carolyn, come down here. We're going to go fishing, and we're going to talk ethics." So down I went, and totally blew off my study group and said, "I'm gone. I got to go study with my dad." And we went out and we fished all day long, and we talked ethics all day long, and I felt so much better about that exam after that day. We didn't catch any fish. But it's just all the fun memories that I have of my dad and being a lawyer and being in this courthouse. I do want to read a letter from my father's last secretary, Barbara Price. She couldn't be here today, so she sent my family a letter. "I regret so much that I am unable to attend this special occasion of the unveiling of the portrait of one of the greatest men I have ever known. I remember well the first time I met Judge Al Brennan. He was sitting as a district court judge in Towson, and I had just been hired as a secretary to the judges there. It struck me immediately that he was a man who looked at life with positivity and enthusiasm. I knew little about his family then, but as time went on, I learned that at that time he had 6 grown children and a few grandchildren. The 12 district court judges rotated every 3 months among the existing 5 district court locations. I recall that I always looked forward to Judge Brennan's turn to sit in Towson because I knew that the air would be lighter due to his calm manner and his great sense of humor. Having lost my father at the tender age of 3, I couldn't help but think that it would have been wonderful to have if my dad had lived longer and was exactly like Judge Brennan. After all, who wouldn't want someone like him for a father? I continue to feel that way to this day. After a few years at district court, Judge Brennan was appointed to the circuit court, and shortly after I was hired to work for Judge Edward DeWaters, who at the time was the county administrative judge. Judge Brennan's chambers was on the 5th floor of the courthouse, and Judge DeWaters' chambers was on the 3rd floor. It was such a pleasure to have a reason to visit his chambers to deliver or pick up some document or file. Occasionally, I would drift up there just to say hello and get a lift from seeing him and his sunny disposition. After 13 years, Judge DeWaters retired, and after 2 more years, it was my good fortune to succeed the secretary who sat in settlement court where Judge DeWaters and Judge Brennan were sitting as retired judges to conduct settlement conferences, along with Judge Howe, whom I had also the pleasure of working for in district court, and of course, Judge Saccone. During the 10 years I worked in settlement court, for all 5 of those judges, Mondays, unlike what most people think about the first day of the week, were a treat. And yes, you guessed it, because Judge Brennan sat on Mondays. He had so many stories to tell, like the time he and his son tried to bake a cake and this batter spattered all over the kitchen. So many jokes to share, so many interesting things he had learned to tell about, either from life experiences or books he had read. And he never took himself too seriously, calling himself Big Al. He was always thinking of other people and things he could do for them. He made sure he was available during my family's week in Ocean City every summer to take my grandsons fishing and to take my husband and me to dinner, along with his exceptional wife, whom he lovingly called Mumsy. His reasonableness and fairness in the courtroom and his gestures of kindness to everyone he knew are his legend. His legacy is the beautiful family he left behind, which now number in the 30s, and his wonderful disposition and positive outlook, which never lapsed even when he knew his days were numbered. It was an honor and privilege to know for over 28 years and to work for a man who touched my life and taught me so much about the goodness in the world. I will remember all these things with much appreciation and affection, when I visit the courtroom to gaze upon his portrait of this wonderful man, Judge Alfred Brennan. Sincerely, Barbara Price. And I just have one more thing to say. This portrait, which you're about to see, was painted by Catherine Meredith. Katie went to Notre Dame, which is a couple years behind me, and her father is George Meredith, who is also an attorney here in town, and another tennis buddy of my dad. She studied art at New York University and has lived most of her adult life in New York and California. She's been a portrait artist for over 20 years, working in oils, but she also enjoys working in watercolor and in charcoal. Ms. Meredith is a member of the Portrait Society of America and is constantly honing her craft. Because her parents knew my dad, her mother was a terrific critic of this portrait. Katie even allowed me and my daughter Claire to come and critique it to make sure that it was exactly in my father's likeness. Ms. Meredith lives in Cockeysville, so it was very easy to get to her studio. I have to say that Katie captured not only the stately Honorable Alfred L. Brennan in this portrait, but she was also able to capture the mischievous twinkle in his eye and the smirk of his lips, that poker face we all know so well. So I know that this community will enjoy my dad's portrait, and it will hopefully impart happy memories of my dad, Alfred Lawrence Brennan Sr.
We've heard from Judge Brennan's family, but I also wanted to indicate to all of the guests that Judge Brennan was and is a treasured part of our courthouse family as well. And as you heard, he was a practicing attorney here in Baltimore County for nearly 3 decades before being named to the District Court of Baltimore County in 1984, and then to the Circuit Court in 1988, retiring in 1998, and then sitting, as you heard, in settlement court. Several colleagues and friends of Judge Brennan shared their feelings about him in the article in the Sun papers last year. And Judge John Fader, who's here, observed, quote, "He had great insight as to what goes on in circuit court and the values of the cases and how things should be settled." And that was appreciated by so many people. Al was conscientious and had great strength. He had terrific ability as an attorney and insight as a judge. He had an immediate grasp of the issues before the court and always exhibited a great judicial temperament and courtesy. Judge Barbara Howe observed, "He was the real deal. He had integrity and was very smart. And when he was in court, he did a wonderful job. He had patience and strength and never got rattled. He was compassionate, fair, impartial, and knew the law. And in her words, he'll never be replaced." And I was about to say something about Barbara Price, who happened to be my first judicial assistant when I was appointed to fill the vacancy of Judge Waters. Barbara knew Judge Brennan for about 30 years and worked with him in settlement court. And Barbara was quoted saying, "What a wonderful person. He's hard to describe because he's about as close to perfection as a person could be." He was selfless, had no ego. All he had was kindness for others and a wonderful zest for life. He said, I guess she said, his polite ways were well known throughout the courthouse. He was always saying thank you for whatever you did for him. He was always thinking about others. There's an interesting story that Harris James Bud George told the reporter for The Sun. He indicated Judge Brennan had a wonderful sense of humor as well. And the story goes like this. One day in district court, Judge Brennan had a case where a man was charged with speeding. When Al asked why, the man explained he was going downhill. After Al looked at the man's driving record, he says, "It appears you've been going downhill a lot." Personally, I was fortunate to serve with Judge Brennan on Maryland State Board of Governors for a couple of years in the 1980s. What I remember is his kindness, as everyone has said. His kindness for others, his kind, engaging smile, and his gentle laughter. It was polite in the extreme, always with a please or a thank you, and regardless of who he was speaking to. It could be a judge, it could be anybody. he was always thoughtful, and that's what I remember. He was the consummate gentleman. He was a true mensch. So with that, I'm going to invite Judge Brennan. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just one other thing.
Yes.
I did want to let everyone know that the portrait artist did come here today. So Catherine,
Oh.
if you could stand, please.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Coney for being here.
Yes.
Welcome. And I also wanted to mention that Nancy Terry Beck is here. So with that, I invite Judge Brennan's grandchildren, all 16 of you, to unveil the portrait. Come down the hall of the courtroom. Good job. One, two, three. Thank you all. On behalf of my colleagues here in the circuit court, I'm happy to accept the portrait on behalf of the Circuit Court of Baltimore County and prominently in this courtroom. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.